Thank you all for coming. Quantinuum. Quantinuum is the world's largest integrated quantum computing company, working in quantum computers both in situ and as a service, pioneering early uses including currently random number generation for cryptography, molecular simulations, early quantum AI, and a suite of developer tools to work out the structural relationship between conventional computing languages and quantum computation. It's taking a full stack approach to quantum computing, blending academic and private sector work, rapidly scaling up an industry, and using an approach designed to lower noise and improve reliability. Announcements in the past year include work with Microsoft on reliability, a 56-qubit computer with 100 times higher fidelity than Google had achieved, and a 30,000 times reduction in power consumption compared to a standard high-performance computer. Partnerships with Singapore, Qatar, and SoftBank, a generative AI framework for development of medicines and climate analysis, and the first on-site deployment of their quantum technology outside the US in a quantum HPC hybrid at RIKEN, Japan's National Research and Development Agency. How am I doing so far? About right?
That's about right.
Anything else you want to throw in there? Be my guest. So that's a pretty reasonable list of ambitions and offerings and accomplishments. And yet, when I asked Ilyas what he wanted people to walk away from in this session, what do you want people thinking about? He didn't talk about the company. He said, they are sleepwalking into a revolution. Quantum computing is a paradigm shift in what it means to be alive. So I think we should just start by unpacking what you meant by that.
Well, thank you, Quentin. I think my prepared comments have all been thrown into the washing machine and turned around again and again, because I sat through the conversation that Mike Milken had with Deepak Chopra. And in words and phrases and imagery and storytelling that's far better than I ever will be, I think Deepak pretty much said the same thing. I don't know if anybody in this room was listening to Deepak a couple of hours ago. And it reminded me that again and again in history, the same thing is perceived or anticipated by different people. And at the end of the day, they arrive at the same conclusion, which is that quantum computing is not simply a disruptive technology. And there's a reason why country after country, nation state after nation state has a quantum program, a multi-year quantum program with some of the most important strategic minds in those countries involved, and the United States is no different. And that reason is that now people realize we are, within our lifetimes, pretty much everybody in this room will be the recipient of an experience that is therefore a revolution and not simply disruption. And I think coming back now on script, Quentin, I think that the most likely impact is where people start to realize that many of the aspirational commentaries around AI need quantum for them to become true.
Okay. Well, let's tease that out a little bit. What is it Deepak said that resonated with you and made you think, this guy and I stand on the same shore?
Yeah, well, he might be on a different planet, the same shore, but so I've been saying something really badly, and Milken said it so well, I'm now going to copy it forever. He said, there isn't paraphrasing, there's no bigger impact on the world's economy than medicine and biology. You know, we get very excited by financial services, we get excited about banking and all these things, but actually they all fade into insignificance compared to the sheer impact on economies and, of course, our own personal lives of biology and chemistry. So what I think, if Deepak were here, he would be saying is that the ability for us to live longer and live with dignity, where the aging process is no longer our enemy, and where we can look, and he said disease is an option for those of you who were in the talk. What he really was talking about is that we are a hop, skip, and a jump away from being able to look after ourselves without having always to address symptoms. We can go to causes. And that is what it's the lifeblood of what we do at Quantinuum. It's why I get up every day in the morning. My company was formed, although I'm the founder, it was actually formed by Stephen Hawking. I was the chairman of the Stephen Hawking Foundation, and Stephen said to me in 2013 that the last frontier for discovery, scientific discovery, which of course, again, Deepak and Milken put this wonderful slide of how humanity has been accelerated by scientific discovery. The last frontier is biological complexity. We understand so many things, but the one thing we do not understand is biological complexity in our brain. I have an anecdote, though, and I'm very conscious that I'm in danger of not answering any of your questions, Quentin.
Just keep going. You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
The anecdote is that I had a double dose of inspiration within the space of 5 days. One was Deepak and Mike Milken. The other one, one of my shareholders is a company called Amgen, which is an American pharmaceutical company. I'm sure all of you know who they are. And they've had this inner barometer of when quantum gets real. And their barometer is a living person. It's a guy called Kauri Stephenson. Kauri spelled Kari. I would strongly encourage any of you, if you do nothing else after this conversation, look up on YouTube Kari, Kari Stephenson. He's a geneticist. He founded a company in 1996 called Decode. Decode is the leading genetic engineering and informatics company in the world. Nobody comes close. There are many reasons for this, one of which is that Iceland has this map of our DNA and, of course, everything that emanates from that goes back many years, and it's a small sample set. And so the Amgen barometer is, if I expose you to Kari Stephenson, he pronounces it the way that Icelandic Vikingers would, which is Kauri. If I expose you to Kauri and Kauri doesn't kick you out of his office or complain to me that you wasted my time, then and only then will I take quantum seriously. Well, of course, it's a slight exaggeration because Amgen had already invested in my company by then, so they must have seen something. I was in Iceland last week, and I realized that everything that Stephen has dreamt of whilst he was alive, everything that I've wanted to do with this company is a hop, skip, and a jump away. We have the data set, we have the quantum processor, we have the TDA topological data analysis, methodologies which can be ported onto a quantum computer, and most importantly of all, we have the wet labs so that within a relatively short span of time, we can do what Deepak and Mike were talking about today.
Okay. Circling back to this thing about what it means to be alive, I think you're talking about apprehending, understanding, however you want to put it, systems biology at an extraordinarily profound level and delivering from that extraordinary treatments for health. And that is delivered, take me through how that is delivered through quantum computation. And as a coda to that, being at the level you're at now inside your company, where the quantum computation is going, do you think this will be a new way of seeing? Do you already have a new way of seeing from this experience?
Yeah, so our chat GPT moment, if you like, the quantum chat GPT moment is clearly going to be in the area of biology, if you like, pharmaceuticals, but particularly these complex systems. And the tipping point is having a computer that cannot be simulated classically. And the reason for that is that no matter how powerful your LLM or your code LLM, it will not move the needle when it comes to these matters. If it did, it would have already, and we'd have known about it. Now, this is different from having data. Data is what we are being overloaded with, and that is a parallel process. So now to answer your question, the first product on the market, I do not believe, by the way, that this will be the ChatGPT moment for quantum, but the first product on the market, and our business model is very different, where we do not simply provide computational capability, we own the IP. So when the drug or the biotech is discovered, we own it and we then license it back to the customer. In this case, it may be Amgen, it may be Glaxo or whatever. And this is a big point, unlike LLMs, where, if I was the great example, Quentin, I think I used with you when you and I first met. If I download Microsoft Word and I write a great screenplay, Microsoft doesn't own the rights to the screenplay. I've already paid for Microsoft Word, and it's my intellectual ownership. In my company, because we're the only people in the world that is possessing this quantum computer, we are 8 years ahead of Microsoft. We are a decade ahead of Google by their own comparison. I mean, we're not quite as good as jumping up and down on CNBC as they are. We're not listed. We're very differently funded. But that lead means that in August of this year, there'll be a machine called Helios. It already exists. It will be publicly launched. Its key quantum application, which is the first time that there's an application that people use for purpose and for commercial benefit, is something which has a drug delivery component. So those of you who are scientific or technical will understand that I say the word or the phrase metal organic frameworks. These are delivery platforms, catalyzers that have been known for a very, very long time. People have been preoccupied with using them for carbon sequestration. We worked with Total in 2019 and came up with something that then we thought was 10 years away from being useful in carbon sequestration. It turns out that it's actually even more useful in drug delivery. So these could be generics like ibuprofen, or it could be something specific for the individual concerned. That Discovery Suite, which is an actual product, we don't have a product name for it yet. It's got a in-house name of Circe, C-I-R-C-E. For those of you who've got the Greek, you can work it out. And that product is essentially a combination of what Microsoft have been talking about for 2 years, which is a quantum supercomputer. There are 3 components to this. There's a very articulate video on this by Jason Zander, April 4th, 2024. One component is a high-performance compute or a cluster of GPUs. A second component is a code LLM or an LLM. And the third component is a quantum computer that cannot be simulated classically. When Zander made his comment, he also said that whoever gets to 100 logical qubits, this is a detail, that is a $1 trillion moment. Now, this is coming from Microsoft, whether you like them, dislike them, or whatever. It has some authority. We buy into that, and that will be available this year, and the 100 logical qubit milestone. So these are just ways of measuring. So that milestone is probably no more than a year later.
Okay.
So we're not talking decades.
There was a very smart guy about 60 years ago who said, writing about Marshall McLuhan, said, we build tools to change the world, and in turn, they change us. Every tool gives you a new way of seeing and analyzing and thinking about the world. How has working in quantum changed the way you see the world, and how do you think it will change the way the world sees itself?
I wish Deepak was here. Look, I think
you appreciate complexity more. You feel complexity.
Yeah, I think it's the nature of reality.
Right.
It's the first time that we as humanity have access to the nature of reality. We're big clodhoppers. We're clumsy. We disturb everything in sight. We kill people. We argue, and the nature of reality exists beneath that, and a quantum computer allows us to do it. So I'm a big believer in open source. The best decision I made I made 2 decisions, actually. One was taking Jamie Montgomery's advice when I was thinking about whether we should do a US acquisition or a merger a few years ago, and he said, don't think about it, just do it. Or he said worse to that effect. But anyway, the other thing is I open source something called Ticket, and we have 30 million users and growing of Ticket, which is a software development kit. And some kid in Rio de Janeiro or Calcutta or I don't know, somewhere, is already way ahead of all of the academics that we thought were our leaders in quantum. And I think that is what I'm most focused on when I talk about how humanity will change. This is entirely democratized.
You know, if I was the CEO of a big company and somebody said to me, we're going to see reality for the first time, I'm not sure I'd know how to get ready for that. You know, when you talk to companies that get what you're up to, do they see opportunities, or do they just think we got to wait for this machine to show up and deal with it?
No, look, I think I'm very sympathetic to this issue. Most companies are preoccupied by how they're going to report their earnings next quarter. And I think there's a time and a place for everything. The early adopters, not surprisingly, are big tech. The next early adopters are the pharma companies and the energy companies. And these people don't need me to tell them why quantum matters. The rest of us are consumers. Right? The rest of us will be the beneficiaries of this. And so that's why I refer to the ChatGPT moment. I think a consumer or mass population facing application of quantum, and I happen to think it'll be in the area of drugs or biology, so gene therapies. That, I think, is what will turn people's attention. In other areas, such as fraud detection and combinatorial optimization problems, all of these issues that we face in our day-to-day lives will be a no-code interface. You don't need to be a PhD in quantum to do this, and you don't need to own a quantum computer. You will be the beneficiary of this, and that's why these markets dwarf anything that today's LLM. I mean, it's dangerous in LA and San Francisco to say these things. You guys are so overwhelmed by what's happening with OpenAI and everything. So I slightly shuddered for the pushback on this. But this is way bigger than anything that could be imagined. Why? Why? Because a computer is a contrived instrument that Alan Turing and Johnny von Neumann came up with using first-order logic and building around that a systematic way of saying yes or no. That is not the way nature works. A quantum computer works the way nature works at the most fundamental level. That changes everything.
What's a good short way to describe the way nature works? Continuous optimization, awareness of all component parts. How would you describe it?
Uncertainty.
Okay. Uncertainty plus awareness of all available parts.
Well, no, I wasn't being flippant. So the minute you can manage uncertainty, I don't know whether people in this room are involved
This Heisenberg type uncertainty?
Well, that is flippant in my opinion.
Yeah, because that means we can't define it.
Yeah, that means we can't define it. No, I think that we handle uncertainty in many ways. And our lives are all about managing risk. And if we have tools to manage uncertainty, then suddenly we're in a different place. And whether it's uncertainty in medicine, uncertainty in finance, uncertainty in data analysis, that's really the
Okay,
point.
uncertainty and its management. I'll
Correct,
take that.
correct.
That's quite good.
Correct.
The classic curve in technology in terms of customers was governments, because they have infinite budgets, particularly at NSA type areas, and then Wall Street, because they'll spend $1 zillion to pick up a half a second trading. And then it was everybody else because the other two had paid for your research. Are governments viewing this positively, or do they see it as a threat?
I wish I could tell you. I don't think there's uniformity. So my company is based here. We're Anglo-American, and I have 14 agencies to whom I'm responsible. 14 three-letter agencies and government departments. And there's no uniformity between all 14, never mind different countries.
Okay.
So I think it's natural that the security types are worried that a quantum computer will crack anything that is currently deemed to be safe in terms of cryptography. But I think more and more the needle's shifting towards opportunity. I think here in the United States and certainly in the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, and China, there is a view that the engine of growth over the course of the next 50 years, and that's how you've got to think about this. You can't just talk about the next 2 or 3 years, for whole economies and populations is driven by this. And by what I mean this industrial revolution.
I have another question, then I'm going to open up to the floor. I have more if need be. But I wanted to pull back just a little bit. And I know Alice and Bob are here and a couple other quantum companies. And there is Microsoft, which has a different approach. There are a range, Google has a different approach from you. There are a range of approaches. Let's describe the industry for a minute. Are you friends in the sense that you're all in a common adventure together? Are you enemies in as much as you're seeking the same space? Or are you strangers because each form of quantum is so different from the other?
Well, I disagree with the latter point. I don't think that characterizing it as being different from each other is actually correct. We're all so what is it?
Well, when I mentioned to you about Microsoft's announcement, you said if the topological
Yes.
qubit is proven, it's game over for everybody else.
Yeah, so I'm exactly. So I think, or any other modality. So guys, think of this in this way: a quantum computer is a device that takes and generates a qubit. So that could be a physical thing, like an atom or an electron or a photon. It manipulates it through a logic gate or a series of logic gates, just as we do with classical computers, and then you measure the outcome. How you do that is currently, because of the immaturity of the industry, being pursued differently by different people. And each one rightly will believe that theirs and only theirs is the right way. And you would not expect any difference at this stage. But there will become a fairway. If you think of it as coming through, a golf analogy, there's a fairway now emerging. And my company was the first mover. We were the first startup in this industry 10 years ago. And during that time, people have come and gone, and we are still cousins, if you like, sometimes friendly, sometimes not friendly. And we definitely are pursuing the same goal. I believe, coming back to your topological announcement, I thought that the Microsoft announcement was very interesting. It's a scientific advance, and a qubit that is impervious to noise or impervious to decoherence is the ultimate end game that everybody wants. There are different ways that people are employing to get to it, but we're all in this same race.
Okay, so cousins is actually a pretty good way to put it right now anyway, because you're operating businesses, but you're also in a kind of common intellectual adventure.
It's a huge market. I mean, let's be honest with you. There's going to be plenty of quantum computing companies, some very, very large ones. I happen to believe that in 15 or 20 years, the largest company in the world will be a quantum company.
Okay.
And I don't think it'll be an existing major. It will be somebody, well, I happen to think it'll be our company, but who knows, right? It will be a quantum computing company that is going to be large because of everything I've described. I would say one thing though, where the animosity comes in, we're all human beings, is if we're competing for the same customer or the same limited pool of capital. But that pool of capital is changing, which is a good thing. It's becoming bigger, it's becoming more knowledgeable, and I think that will only aid and abet the acceleration of this industry.
Very quickly, do we have questions from the audience? Yes, Marlo.
Marlon Bryant from Marsh Capital. Obviously we've been following the Quantinuum story for a while. I'm just curious, and I think that's a bold statement on in the next decade, the biggest company will probably be a quantum computing company. I like that vision. I'm just curious about how you think that develops, and what can we learn from cloud computing of the last era? Can we learn from any of those? How do you think that it's actually going to take shape?
And what does it mean for all the clouds and HPC companies and hardware companies making traditional equipment?
Yeah, so I get the 15 years from something I said in 2020. I thought that at 2040 there would be a universal fault-tolerant quantum computer that's ubiquitous, and therefore the applications that emanate from that would be generating the value that then in turn creates the largest company. So if you think of Aramco, it didn't happen overnight. You first got to get the crude, then you've got to have a use for the crude, and then you've got to refine it. So I won't bore you with the MBA version. To get to the meat of your question, though, I think that what it looks like is the it is the ability to work with seamlessly with existing classical compute. Large classical compute is not going anywhere. It is a part of our lives. I'm not going to have a quantum computer to watch a YouTube or something or do all the things that people want to do. So it will be that seamlessness. And that's so the two pillars of what we do at Quantinuum. One, we're maniacally focused on the biggest application, which is biology, pharmaceuticals, if you like. And then secondly, the hybridicity in quantum. So our announcement with SoftBank a few weeks ago to build a quantum data center is to co-locate these machines.
Other questions, very quickly, otherwise we are out of time. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.